High school math is one of those subjects that tends to terrify moms, even more than any other high school subject. So let's start at the beginning. What is a credit of math, and what does a typical progress look like? High school credits, and this goes for all of them, but in this case math, equals about 120 to 180 hours of work. For math, that's one textbook. Whether that's a homeschool curriculum, public school, whatever it is, that's going to be a credit. Okay. Typically, colleges want 3 to 4 credits. This seems to be somewhat regional. In my part of the country, almost every school that we looked at for Elizabeth wanted 4 years of credits, and we looked mostly in the Midwest and like North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, this region. And they generally wanted 4 years of math. We're going to talk about a couple caveats to that here in a minute. So that's what was expected. Now, a typical progression, looks like Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2 or Advanced Algebra, and then something else. Now, a couple caveats here. Well, first, what is that 4th year? 4th year can be different things. If you have a college-bound student, then that 4th credit is probably going to be something like statistics or trigonometry or pre-calculus. If you don't have a college-bound student, then what do you want to do? You can do something like personal finance, consumer math, business finance if they think they're going to, if they have interest in running their own business someday. If they're not college bound, you still have that option of something like statistics. My daughter, when she took statistics 2 years ago, she said that she thinks that is something that every high school student would, or college student, should come out of that time having taken or at least more experience than what we get in a typical math program. She absolutely loved it. And I heard so many people back, especially early in 2020, saying the same thing. That they could understand all the statistics that were coming at us better and all that information because they've had that. And it's definitely something that I wish that I had had. So something like statistics could be a great 4th course, no matter if your student's going to college or not. Also, some colleges will not accept any work or any credits done before high school. We looked at a couple that very clearly said only credits within the last 4 years. Where Elizabeth ended up going, I'm not sure what their rule was, because she had enough in high school, but be aware of that and maybe poke around at some possible schools or schools in your area to see what's typical for them. In some areas, high school math is not broken down like algebra, algebra 2, geometry. They do a mashup of all of that progressively each year. But even if that's what's typical in your area, colleges will expect to see it either way. So don't feel like you have to do that. Your math has to look the same as the math at your local high schools. Okay. Now, what else can you do for that 4th year? Well, Elizabeth ended up doing 9th grade, she did geometry. 10th grade, she did advanced algebra. And then her junior year, she did dual enrollment and took pre-calculus one semester and statistics the other semester. Since a college semester course is the same credit-wise as a high school full year course, those were her 2 extra credits, or 2 additional credits to give her 4. If you have a student who isn't quite ready for trigonometry, but they need a 4th year, a trig class is a great option, especially if they are college bound. Like I said, something like personal finance you could do. Colleges may or may not count that, but again, it depends whether you need a 4th year or if 3 credits of math is going to work. Now to summarize that, because I feel like that was really wordy, a high school student is typically going to need 4 credits of math, maybe 3, and each of those credits is about 120 to 180 hours of schoolwork or 1 textbook. And a typical progression is Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, or Advanced Algebra. Now, there's lots of ways that might look different depending on your kiddo and your home, but that's kind of a typical thing. If you have a kiddo who is interested in a more selective school, or they are wanting to major in something that's heavy in math, then you're going to want to at least get through pre-calculus, if not calculus as well. Even if they don't take it in a way that can count for college, having that exposure and that basis of it in high school, that experience is going to help them so much when they move on to college. Before we get to curriculum suggestions, a few more things about math. 1, don't feel like you have to grade every day's math. The work that they are doing from day to day is a great opportunity for them to work and work and work until they get it. The goal here is, really learn to master it, because they need that foundation of the daily work that progresses and builds on each other in order for them to do well in the chapter tests, the quizzes, and the following year. In our home, this looks different. So Ben is doing Mr. D's math. He has work that he has to do. He goes through it. If he gets stuck on a problem, I help him. But when he's done, he has to check his answers. Then he has a short little quiz, multiple choice quiz online to go along with each assignment. So we're seeing whether or not while he's doing the work, we're evaluating, in a sense, how well he understands it by how much he needs help. Then he checks his answers, and if any of them are wrong, again, we've got an evaluation there, he can go back, fix it, before he takes the quiz. And then those quizzes build to the chapter tests. For Matthew, he's taking an online class using a textbook. So the same is what I've done with him. He does his work. If he needs help, I help him. When he's done with his work each day, he checks it or I check it. And then that's another way that we're evaluating it. This is what I did with Elizabeth as well. With Matthew, sometimes I do grade his assignments because he wants a grade. He's motivated by that. So we will do grades sometimes, but not every day. Another tip here is that tools aren't cheating. If you pop into your Google like math cheat sheets, you're going to find lots of tools, or what I would call tools, but that other people they use that word cheat. And even if they don't mean it in the real sense of the word cheat, it can ingrain in our heads that if your kid's using it, they're cheating in a way. I don't think so. I firmly believe that math tools are helpful no matter what your age. That doesn't necessarily mean a calculator. I mean, it can, and in high school math, it often will. Some people will really try not to use a calculator in high school, but your child's going to need it. However, when I'm talking about tools, I'm talking about other things. So I've got a binder here, and if you want to know more about it, let me know, and I'll do more of a formal flip through at some point. But what I did with this, it started when my kiddos were in elementary school, and it would include things like an addition chart, multiplication chart. Yes, the goal is that they memorize that, but both of my boys struggled in a way that Elizabeth never did, and a way that I never did. But having that chart, eventually it all just came better. Because sometimes when you're doing work, the goal is more about the process of solving that actual problem. And if not being able to recall a simple math multiplication fact is slowing them down from that, well, then what's your focus? Anyway, so as this came about just as we needed it, what did I feel like they kept struggling and needing help reminding with? So we have a multiplication chart. Obviously, my boys don't need that much anymore, but they did at one point. We have, I have this little graph here that I just hand wrote for Ben with when he got to graphing so that he could remember easily at a glance where his points should be based on whether the X was negative or positive and the Y was negative or positive. Often this was just a check. So he would do his work and then he would look and see if his answer matched up with what it should be. Simple, but it was a simple tool to help him check that. Didn't give him the answer. If it was wrong, like if his answer didn't match this, then he still had to do the work. But it was a quick tool to help him. Definition of parallel and perpendicular lines. Different formulas like the quadratic formula, the point slope formula. I've got a whole chart about exponent rules. Because, exponents are something that can be really hard to remember what you need to do with each one. Well, having this little chart meant that they still had to do the work, but it was helpful to keep straight. So, again, if you are interested in more about this, I will do a longer video about it. Tools aren't cheating, okay? That's my takeaway from this. They can absolutely help your student with the bigger picture because they don't have to focus on some of those other things that might slow them down. Don't be afraid to help them with tools. Now, as for you, tools are your friend. Khan Academy, the Photo Math app, two absolute tools. Google, I think, now has a version of it as well. These are tools that can absolutely help you to be able to help your kiddo. Now, some people say, well, high school math, I'm afraid of it. I don't remember it. It was so long ago. I don't want to do anything with it. And if that works for your family, fantastic. For our family, I didn't want to take that approach for a couple of reasons. One, it tells my kids that math is something that at some point you can forget about and that's okay. Two, it tells my kiddos that, and this is the way I perceive it, if you have a different view, go for it. But there's also that view of like math is scary and too hard. So I can't do it. That attitude can absolutely rub off. I've got a whole other soapbox on that topic, but it can rub off. Also, part of the joy of homeschooling for us is that ability to relearn things and to learn things that we didn't know before. I cannot tell you how many things that I've done during math with my kiddos that I didn't understand well before that now I do. Am I ever going to really need to know rise over run outside of helping my kiddos? Absolutely not. But I feel such an accomplishment when I can now figure out what the slope is, the point, our standard form, moving things from one of those to slope-intercept form, whatever. I can do all of that now. Can you tell what we're deep in the middle of right now with Matthew? So for me, there's a sense of personal accomplishment there that like, yeah, you know what? I may have struggled with that before, but I don't now. And that's a reminder to me that math doesn't have to be scary and that we can keep learning way beyond those formal education years. For a lot of reasons, I personally don't want to be completely hands-off with high school math. Now, Ben, I've not really had to do much with him. He's been able to understand it all, but I'm available if he needs it. And I have tools that I can use to help me understand so that I can help him. And that in and of itself is it's a confidence thing. Like, yeah, you know what? I can figure this out. It may take me a little bit. And especially right this year with geometry, that wasn't something I was great at in high school. But I have the tools that I can use if he needs it. One side note there. If I didn't know this until Elizabeth was almost done with high school math. If you have a problem that you're really stuck on and you can't figure it out, copy and paste the formula into Google, because it is amazing how often there's just a slight variation with different numbers. Same exact wording almost, but with a couple different numbers are out there. I was absolutely gobsmacked when I realized this. It was with a story problem that she was trying to do. I think it was in pre-calc. And we put it in, and it was almost exactly there. The same wording, the numbers were just different in it. I was like, what? First of all, why didn't I know this before? Second of all, I guess that's the way that a lot of curriculum just does it. You don't always have to reinvent the wheel. So pop that into Google sometimes if you need it as well. You'll be amazed. When you're looking at high school math, you've got several different options of styles. But what I want to say before we get into specifics is that you don't have to peg yourself into one style for the entire time. Okay? What works for you one year may not work for you another year. It may work for one kid, and the next kid needs something completely different. I think with math, above any other subject, math is very individual. And the choices you make can make the difference between a great math year and a not so great math year. There's other reasons, but you can really set your kiddo up for success or failure with the curriculum choice. You have textbooks, public school, homeschool curriculum, whatever. That's a self-paced option. You have video, another self-paced option. You have hybrid, which is a textbook with a video series. You have live math classes, whether they're in person or not in person. That's not going to be a self-paced. And then you have dual enrollment. Again, not self-paced. So let's start back at the beginning. Textbook. Textbook can be great for a family where the kiddo, one, just prefers a textbook. Can be good for a family where one of the parents is strong in math and able to help guide and explain where need be. Examples of textbook math can include Wiles, which is what Elizabeth used with her math classes, and then what Matthew's been using. And I'll get into those classes in a minute. That is a public school curriculum that is excellent. I buy them used on Amazon. I think I've gotten every one of them for under $10 with shipping, which is fantastic for a high school textbook. Other ones include Forrester's, Jacobs, which I have a copy of Jacobs, but I don't know where it is. So that's another option. The original one is out of print, but I think Master Books is the company that sells it now. They've made a few modifications, but I don't think very much. I think it's pretty true to its original form. And Saxon. Those are all good textbook-based math, depending on what your kiddo needs. Video-based maths, there are things like CTC, Thinkwell's, Mr. D's self-paced version. Now your hybrid ones, which are textbook-based with video explanations. You have something like Math Without Borders, which uses the Forrester's textbooks, and he has videos to go with it. And that's what I think Matthew's going to use next year, and I believe they're like $130 per course, plus your textbook. So quite reasonable for that kind of a setup. Mr. D's is similarly priced. I think it's $127 maybe, for maybe somewhere around there. Denison Math, which this one is newer to me. I've heard of it for years, but I didn't know what it was. but I went looking at it. It specifically bills itself as math for a student who is struggling or dislikes math. I didn't watch any of the videos, but if you have a kiddo who fits that category, I would definitely check out Denizens. I would almost also throw in Mr. D's here, in that they have the videos, but then they have worksheets that they do to go along with it. So while it's video based, there's also worksheets for the homework. Now the quizzes and the tests are online, multiple choice. Now live class options. So you may have something like your co-op. In my opinion, I'm not sure I would want to do a co-op setting if your kiddo only goes once a week. In that, that's only one day a week that they're going to get the math instruction, and then all those other days where they're not. And so it's going to rely more on you or a kiddo working independently. So to me, that's not necessarily the best option if I want an in-person live class. But it may be your only option. If you're in a bigger city, you may find in-person classes. We are not in Raleigh, but we're not far from it. So I see a lot of what gets offered there. There are a lot of options over there for in-person live math classes that meet several days a week. Now for math that's live but not in person, you have OutSchool. I have not looked at any of the high school math courses on there. So I don't have any idea of what's available, but there's lots of reviews on every course or most courses. So be sure to check those out. There's options like My Homeschool Math Class, which is what we have used. I did a video several years ago about it that I will try to remember to link down there, but you can find it on my channel as well. We've been very happy with that. Matthew is not going to continue it, but I'll talk about that when I do what we're using next year, because it's not anything against her. It's just Matthew. Math with Amy is a website, live math classes, that I've heard really good things about. We have not used them, but I see them recommended a lot by people that I respect. Mr. D's has a live version as well as their self-paced version, so I've heard good things about it. A couple of you I know have used it, so that's definitely an option. If you want to know more about Mr. D's, I did a video last year. I think it was last year. Yeah. Last spring. So you can go check that out. Ben just finished geometry. My opinion of it doesn't change. It is a fantastic program. If you just have a kiddo who is not science bound, is not math bound, and does quite well, just fine with math, but not a math star, Mr. D's, I think, is a great option. And then there's dual enrollment, which is what we chose to do with with Elizabeth for starting her junior year. I think it was a fantastic option as a first entry into dual enrollment into college setting, because the expectations are clear for them. Like, you do the math homework, you listen in class, you take notes, you do the quizzes and the tests. Like, it's very clear. Versus something like an English course, the writing can be ambiguous, and what does a teacher want, and how does that mesh with my style, and all of that. It can be definitely more ambiguous. But math is pretty clear. Like, there's one right answer. How do you get there? Like, it's pretty straightforward. So I think it was a great option for her. Now, in our area, North Carolina, students can take free community college courses starting their junior year, with some exceptions about a little earlier. So for us, it was a no-brainer, because even if they didn't transfer, she still had that experience of being in a college courseroom or college classroom, dealing with a professor, dealing with college level work. As it turns out, they both transferred. Statistics didn't transfer for her major, but it transferred as an elective. So now you know what a high school math progression looks like, what a college or high school credit looks like, some suggestions on getting started. What other curriculum have we used in high school? Go check out the video over there, and I'll see you there.